her amazing secret was revealed: how a janitor transformed a company against all odds. Every whispered conversation echoed against the polished marble floors as Sarah meticulously cleaned the corners of the firm's conference room. "The fate of the case lies in their hands," she overheard one lawyer say, their voice filled with anxiety. In the back of her mind, she held on to the hope that her own hands could shape a better future. Alone in the vastness of the firm at night, washing away the grime from the day, she felt shackled to her task, longing for wings to soar beyond the confines of her janitorial uniform. Little Ethan was counting on her, and that responsibility both grounded her and suffocated her dreams. At 35, Sarah had willingly sacrificed her aspirations for higher education. A legacy of family loyalty weighed down her heart, especially after her father's illness forced her to navigate adulthood earlier than expected. Day after day, she scrubbed floors while imagining a life not just of survival, but one where dreams thrived. But deep down, doubt clawed at her, the question of whether she was driven by ambition or simply resentment for all those years lost. Could a janitor have any say in a world dominated by suits and status? As she absorbed the conversations around her, an unsettling awareness settled in. Key ideas sat dormant, ignored by sharp minds drowned in their quest for accolades. It tightened like a vice around her throat. How could they overlook such potential? And that's when a flicker of determination ignited inside her. She had to jot these observations down, to weave them into something powerful. Could she really do it? Each night that passed stoked the fire, yet with every scribbled note, anxiety tightened its grip. There was an entrepreneurial spirit within her, begging to escape. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. Mr. Jenkins had been a father figure, nurturing her ambitions during her teenage years. His encouragement felt like a lifeline. Yet, as she confided in him, questions gnawed at her. Did she really possess something worthy of sharing? What if they laughed? What if the junior partners ridiculed her, a mere janitor daring to disrupt their world? Those fears lived in her bones, refusing to let go. The day of that pivotal meeting loomed heavily on her. Anxiety blazed like wildfire within her, escalating to a point where confidence felt like a fleeting ghost. Standing before the polished tabletop where the partners sat, she could see their skepticism, could feel judgment spill into the air. As she began her presentation, the atmosphere shifted. Disbelief froze the air. How had she gotten here? With temptation to retreat, to slip away unnoticed, she lingered. Were her father's notions of integrity worth this? But in that moment, the room shifted. Tension flared, snarky remarks cut the air, and a wall of doubt slammed against her resolve. Here she stood, not just for herself, but for every underappreciated worker, the muffled voices of so many. The echoes of her scrubbing brush met the sharpness of fate. Could she shatter the status quo, confront the giants who had cast her aside? With the air thickening around her and the stakes climbing higher, she stood, heart racing, ready to fight. Would she break through or be silenced once again? The moment hung between them, thick with anticipation, waiting for resolution or chaos. The silence in the boardroom was suffocating. Sarah's heart drummed against her chest as she locked eyes with the partners seated before her. Each one seemed a fortress of privilege, skeptical and unyielding. Mustering every ounce of courage she possessed, she cleared her throat, the sound echoing off the sterile walls. "Thank you for giving me this opportunity," she began, acutely aware that every word counted. She felt the weight of Mr. Jenkins' faith resting on her shoulders, a silent promise urging her onward. Her hands shook slightly as she revealed her concept, a novel approach to operational efficiency that could elevate the firm's clients and profits. The data she had meticulously gathered during her late-night reflections, the ideas struck her in moments where she encountered breakdowns in communication and workflow. All those insights were now laid bare for judgment. Trepidation threatened to swallow her whole, yet clarity emerged from the chaos. This was her moment. As she spoke, the flickers of interest among some partners were palpable, but the sneers of others only deepened her resolve. Ignoring the urge to retreat, she leaned into her passion, feeling the adrenaline fuel her words. Every person in this firm has potential, but that potential is being wasted. Imagine what we could achieve if we really listened to each other, she implored. Those same instincts that had pushed her through years of doubt now guided her into uncharted territory, the realm of possibility. The director of operations, Mr. Thompson, was the first to respond, his voice dripping with condescending doubt. "And what would a janitor know about firm strategy?" he questioned, eyeing her behind thick-framed glasses. The room buzzed with murmurs, the energy of disbelief intensifying. In that vicious moment of confrontation, a part of Sarah wanted to crumble, to escape into the shadows where she'd always felt most comfortable. Yet another part screamed for her to stand her ground.
"I know what it feels like to be ignored," she began, her voice steadying, unwavering in the face of adversity. "I see inefficiencies that go unnoticed when we pass by them every day. I've spent years listening to staff, hearing their struggles, and we are all capable of achieving greatness together." The words poured from her, imbued with authenticity. She could feel the edges of fear begin to fray, replaced with a burgeoning sense of purpose. As she spoke, she noticed an unexpected ally, Anne, one of the junior partners, leaning forward with a glimmer of intrigue in her eyes. In that instant, Sarah recognized that her fight wasn't just to be acknowledged, it was for the myriad unspoken voices echoing in the very structure she sought to reform. A bisecting conviction to reshape the narrative began to manifest within her, propelling her forward. But the moment didn't remain suspended for long. The thick air pulsed with tension, and competition morphed from skepticism to open hostility. A few partners exchanged sharp glances, their displeasure at being questioned evident. "Are we truly ready to take advice from the janitorial staff?" another scoffed, rattling the carefully constructed facade of professionalism. The barrage of comments came at her like a storm. Winded but determined, she prepared to center herself despite the chaos. With every word, Sarah's heart pounded louder, resonating with her surge of newfound authority. She was redefining her identity in that room, shedding the janitor label for something more profound, a visionary challenging the status quo. While internally grappling with her self-worth, she discovered an alarming truth. Vulnerability could be her greatest weapon in the very setting where she had felt the least powerful. The meeting spiraled into an unpredictable landscape, a battle between tradition and innovation, rejection and realization. Would she galvanize her opponents to embrace her vision, or would the tide of bias drown her in the suffocating depths of corporate indifference? Each unanswered question loomed larger, propelling her further into the depths of resolve. As the tension thickened and the world around her buzzed with uncertainty, Sarah glanced around the table, steeling herself for what would come next. There was no turning back now. She had awakened a fire inside of herself. The consequences of this confrontation could pivot the very course of her life and the lives of countless others. What would it take to shift the opinions in this room? Could she truly disrupt their worlds and warrant respect? The answers felt tantalizingly close, yet shadowed by the ominous threat of rejection. Would the weight of their disbelief crush her newfound aspirations, or would this moment of truth redefine her destiny? The room, once a silent chamber of skepticism, pulsed with charged energy, and Sarah felt her resolve harden further. But doubt lingered like a specter in the back of her mind.
Each question thrown at her meant something deeper. It was not just about the proposal, this was about who she was. Facing the board, she balanced on a tightrope between fear and ferocity, her instincts sharpening as the stakes climbed ever higher. "Who would have thought a janitor could have such insights?" Mr. Thompson reiterated, his smirk cutting through the tension like a knife. Sarah's chest tightening, she channeled the anger bubbling inside her, not against him, but against a very system that boxed her in. "I'm not asking for your permission to speak. I'm demanding your attention, because I've witnessed the flaws firsthand," she declared, her voice louder now, reverberating off the walls like cannon fire. Anne, her silent supporter, visibly shifted in her seat, sensing the turning tide. Sarah let her gaze linger on her, absorbing that singular look of encouragement. If she was going to stand here, expose herself to further derision, it would be with intent. "Every time I clean this building, I encounter not just dirt, but the stories of people who feel undervalued, those whose voices should carry weight in these discussions. The shift in some of the partners' expressions was barely perceptible, yet it was there, a sliver of acknowledgement that prompted something deeper. Anne leaned forward even more, her body language radiant, widening the potential for connection she had been searching for. Imagine fostering an environment, Sarah continued, urgency threading through her words, where every department, every janitor, every analyst feels heard. That is where productivity flourishes. The intensity in Sarah filtered through the room as she focused on the tangible benefits instead of the reactionary guffaws of disbelief. She had witnessed disengagement in staff, performance slumps amid unaddressed grievances. She wasn't just a janitor making a case, she was an advocate for real change. As the conversation began to tilt from harsh critiques to a deeper examination, an unmistakable presence invaded the air. Mr. Thompson's irritation was surfacing, and Sarah could almost see the gears turning in his mind. In her periphery, she caught Anne whispering to a colleague, sowing the seeds for potential support. The moment was fragile and electric, yet Sarah could not let her guard down. "You want to lead a firm built on tradition," Sarah interjected, with a stillness that felt powerful. "Yet that very foundation could crumble if it continues to ignore the voices that maintain it. We're at a crossroads." The clarity she'd discovered about herself pulsated through each syllable, rousing the question within her. Who else had ever felt this fervor? Mr. Thompson's response was quick, pounce of fury flashing in his eyes. "And you think shifting the perspective of the entire firm rests on a few emotional anecdotes? You're naive, Sarah." "Naive?"
His words scorched her, yet the instant she met his glare with equal tenacity, a decision crystallized within her. She understood that she was no longer pleading for acknowledgement. She was laying the groundwork for a serious discussion with substantial implications. "Maybe my insights can seem emotional, but Mr. Thompson, you claim to lead this firm into a future of success. If that's the case, wouldn't you prefer embracing the very dynamics that could set us apart from our competitors?" The question hung between them, crackling with tension. She felt time slow, the clock ticking down to a decisive impact. She could sense a shift around the room, subtle movements and a few poised gestures of support blossoming from unexpected corners. "Have you ever questioned what could happen if you truly listened?" The air thickened with her challenge, as every partnership and hierarchy she had known redefined itself within her thoughts. With each inhalation, she understood the undefined potential ahead, but she also recognized one crucial barrier: fear. What would it take to unravel the biases woven so deeply into their culture? More importantly, could she gain their trust while they struggled to understand the concept of transformation? Steeling herself, she readied for whatever response awaited her. Her path forward hinged on this moment. Her realization crushed down on her with clarity. She was no longer just a janitor. She had stepped into the guise of a revolutionary. Suddenly, the door eased open and a new figure entered, the firm's CEO, Mrs. Collins, her presence commanding immediate respect. Sarah's heart raced. The stakes had taken a sudden turn. Would Mrs. Collins reinforce the status quo, or might she offer Sarah the opportunity to truly challenge the narrative? Before any words could surface, the laughter of the partners was silenced. All eyes shifted to one person, and Sarah braced herself. The tide was about to shift again. For better or worse, her moment of truth was now undeniably within reach. As Mrs. Collins entered, the atmosphere in the room shifted palpably. Her presence radiated authority, a stark contrast to the casual confrontations of the earlier moments. Sarah clenched her fists under the table, feeling the weight of anticipation press down on her. This was more than just a board meeting. It was a make-or-break moment to redefine her place in this world. "Thank you for your contributions so far," Mrs. Collins said, her voice steady and assured. "I believe in open dialogue, especially when it comes to innovation and culture within our firm." The overture appeared to douse the prior conflict, but Sarah sensed an underlying current of skepticism from the partners, especially from Mr. Thompson, whose face twisted into a knot of defiance. "Sarah," Mrs. Collins continued, "I must admit, you've intrigued me. Would you mind sharing more about your vision for addressing the communication breakdown within our teams?" Every eye in the room zeroed in on her, the space suddenly feeling like a spotlight focused on her thoughts. Panic threatened to surge, but she anchored herself in the moment. Was this her chance to finally propel her ideas forward? "I believe communication is key to understanding the challenges faced by the people in this company at every level," she replied, her voice steadying.
When I'm cleaning those offices, I notice how often the feelings of frustration bubble beneath the surface. The workers who are invisible in every meeting should be given room to express their thoughts, because they often hold the keys to our operational success. Mr. Thompson scoffed, shaking his head. That's all well and good, but how do you plan to implement such changes? This is a corporate structure we're discussing, not a town hall meeting. Change occurs on the ground level, Sarah shot back, her confidence swelling. If our employees believe their ideas matter, their morale will improve, productivity will soar, and guess what? We'll be able to attract and retain top talent. The wariness in the air had morphed into consideration, and Sarah felt a surge of hope. Yet she understood that she needed to embed herself deeper into this dialogue, to forge the connections she had spent so long envisioning. Let's be realistic, she continued, eyeing the mixture of apprehension and curiosity on their faces. If we create a feedback system that empowers every voice, we can align our objectives while simultaneously addressing everyday frustrations. Mrs. Collins appeared contemplative, her eyes flickering from Sarah to the board members, gauging their responses. The subtle shifts amongst the partners gave Sarah a glimmer of optimism. She was becoming a catalyst for the conversations she had longed to instigate. However, a new thought struck her. Was she risking her standing by extending this challenge, or was she actually solidifying it? Doubt loomed, swirling in the corners of her mind, threatening to unravel the momentum she had gained. Insight matters, but so does structure, Mrs. Collins said finally, her gaze locking onto Sarah's. How do you propose to build a bridge between the janitors who witness the operations daily and the decision-makers who drive this firm's direction? Through actionable initiatives, inclusive brainstorming sessions and workshops that facilitate dialogue across all departments. Leadership needs to realize that innovative solutions may come to light from a janitor's perspective. Sarah hesitated, the path forward clear yet intimidating. A slanting glance from Mr. Thompson revealed his wrath simmering just beneath the surface. Could he sabotage her ideas, or was his authority weakening? I'm prepared to champion this, she asserted, her voice resolute. If I have the chance to spearhead a pilot program, I can demonstrate that real change begins from the ground up. The room held its breath as Mrs. Collins considered the proposition.
After what felt like an eternity, she responded, "Let's set up a meeting to discuss how we might move forward with this concept. Engaging more voices could prove beneficial. We all know we need an infusion of fresh ideas." As the meeting concluded and the partners rose to leave, Sarah sat back, the adrenaline slowly fading from her veins. She had done it. She had placed her vision on the table. Yet as relief washed over her, another layer of concern emerged. Would Mrs. Collins truly advocate for her unconventional approach, or would it fall victim to the very system Sarah had fought to alter? The stakes were still high. The real work was just beginning. Who would stand beside her in this journey, and how could she prepare for the inevitable pushback she would face as she endeavored to make meaningful change? With these questions swirling, Sarah's heart raced again, her resolve hardening into something stronger. The moment had come to transform not just the company, but herself as well. The following week unfolded like a tightly wound coil, each day filled with discussions and preparations for the upcoming meeting that could change everything. Sarah bounced between exhilaration and self-doubt, questioning her capability to lead an initiative so groundbreaking. She spent her evenings researching successful corporate structures that allowed for grassroots innovation, imagining what her workshops would look like, and drafting proposals that outlined inclusive feedback systems. However, amid the flurry, Mr. Thompson's shadow loomed large. His dismissal of her ideas during the board meeting replayed like a broken record in her mind. He presented a formidable barricade to the acceptance of her vision. As each day passed, the memory of his scoff felt more like a challenge than an insult. What if she could look past the immediate opposition and see the potential allies she could unearth? Determined to unearth allies within the company, she initiated informal conversations with her coworkers during breaks in the cleaning schedule, opportunities to exchange thoughts beyond the walls of her current tasks. To her surprise, many resonated with her vision. Their tales of grievances didn't just mirror her own observations, they revealed layers of frustration intertwined with hope for a more inclusive workplace. Encouraged, Sarah found herself sketching out a curriculum for a pilot program titled Voices of the Ground. She envisioned workshops that would involve not just her peers, but also management, an upward flow of communication designed to foster understanding and collaboration.
Her excitement surged as she envisioned a vibrant atmosphere fostering creativity and collective problem-solving. But doubt crept back as she faced the logistics of bringing this idea to fruition. How could she ensure that the higher-ups would take the program seriously? Would they view her as a mere janitor, or could she establish her place as a legitimate voice for change?
Seeking clarity, she scheduled a meeting with Mrs. Collins, intending to present her refined proposal for Voices of the Ground. As she prepared her pitch, Sarah felt an uncharacteristic calm settle over her. She knew this was not just about corporate restructuring. It was about her own journey from being seen as invisible to becoming a beacon of necessary change. The day arrived, and Sarah smoothed her blouse before stepping into the private meeting room. Mrs. Collins greeted her with a warm smile, inviting her to take a seat. The tension in the air felt charged, a mixture of hope and anxiety swirling around them. "I must commend your initiative, Sarah," Mrs. Collins began. "Not many have the courage to suggest a paradigm shift like this. So tell me, what do you envision as the next steps?" With her heart racing, Sarah launched into her presentation, outlining her ambitious ideas and showcasing the evidence garnered from her discussions with colleagues. She could see Mrs. Collins nodding, seemingly impressed. Yet the specter of Mr. Thompson loomed in her mind, and Sarah anchored her resolve, preparing for the counter-arguments she knew were inevitable. "While I appreciate your enthusiasm," Mrs. Collins countered thoughtfully, "implementing such a program will require the commitment of the entire executive team. You know there are those who may resist change, specifically within your own department." Sarah paused, feeling the weight of Mrs. Collins' insight. It wasn't just about her proposal. She needed a strategy for navigating the politics of the boardroom, especially concerning dissenting voices like Mr. Thompson's. Could she find a way to win him over, or at least neutralize his opposition? "I understand," she replied, each word steeped in determination. "This program will aim to cultivate a culture of respect, starting with open dialogues with those who may oppose it. If we can engage Mr. Thompson in the process, we just might reveal the common ground." Mrs. Collins leaned forward, intrigued. "That's a strong strategy, Sarah. If you can gain his interest and participation, it could almost guarantee the success of the initiative." The discussion continued, and by the end of the meeting, Sarah felt a glimmer of hope. Mrs. Collins expressed faith in her plan, but power dynamics hadn't shifted yet. The potential for sabotage still loomed large. As she left the office, Sarah contemplated the journey ahead. Creating change was going to be a war of attrition, and she would need to prepare both mentally and strategically for battle. Feeling the adrenaline coursing through her, Sarah recognized that this was not merely a campaign for corporate reform, but a deeper quest for validation and purpose. Yet as she stood gazing out the window of her workspace, the question remained, would she have the resilience to confront the biggest obstacle ahead, and could she do it alone? The morning light filtered through the dusty windows, illuminating motes of dust swirling in the air like thoughts flitting through Sarah's mind. She paced her cluttered workspace, rehearsing her approach to engage Mr. Thompson. A confrontation, she realized, was not just about presenting ideas, it was about wielding the subtle art of persuasion. This was not simply a struggle for professional legitimacy, it was an internal battle for her own sense of self-worth. As Sarah prepared to face Mr. Thompson, she recalled her conversations with colleagues, the collective yearning for change that united them. Each voice she had heard resonated within her, fortifying her resolve. She glanced down at the stack of feedback forms she had compiled from their discussions. This was her arsenal, data and collective sentiment that could effectively dismantle the barriers Mr. Thompson had so steadfastly raised. She took a deep breath before stepping out of her office. This was it, the moment she had been wrestling with since her initial idea had sparked. Would he respond with skepticism, or could she spark something deeper within him? Determined to embrace the unpredictability, Sarah sought him out, her footsteps echoing in the empty corridors. When she found Mr. Thompson in the break room, the scent of coffee swirling around them, she felt a familiar tension. He was reviewing some paperwork, his glasses perched on the edge of his nose, an air of authority cloaked around his presence. Steeling her resolve, she approached him with deliberate calm. "Mr. Thompson, do you have a moment? I'd like to discuss my proposal further," she said, striving to keep her voice steady. He barely glanced up, his eyebrows raised in skepticism. "Make it quick, Sarah. I'm busy." Her heart sank for a split second, only to be met soon with a surge of defiance. "I believe our department could significantly benefit from the program I proposed, the Voices of the Ground. I think it can improve not just morale, but also our productivity and creativity. Can I share some insights from my discussions with our colleagues?" Now he looked at her, his expression sharpening. "You're serious?"
Yes, I am. She leaned in slightly, lowering her voice. I've collected data reflecting a strong desire among our peers for inclusivity. This isn't just another initiative. It's a response to real frustrations within the team. Some voices are unheard, and it impacts our overall efficiency. Mr. Thompson shifted in his seat, crossing his arms. And why would that be my concern? I run a business. What do I care for sentiments? It affects your bottom line, she pressed, drawing on her growing confidence. If we ignore these voices, we risk fostering an environment that stifles innovation. Employees who feel respected and heard contribute significantly more. This program aims not to insinuate a pity party, but to open dialogues where all levels of staff can engage meaningfully. Don't you want that?
For the first time, a flicker of curiosity crossed his face. She saw the stone facade begin to crack, and she pressed on, not allowing him to retreat behind his defenses again. By participating in this program, you would be at the forefront of a necessary shift, steering our company towards a more dynamic and adaptable future. A silence fell between them, and she could see him processing. This was her opening. The pulse of doubt he might harbor against her was beginning to waver. Fine, he finally replied, his tone begrudgingly neutral. You'll have 30 minutes on the agenda next week, but present something concrete, not just wishful thinking. Her heart soared as she nodded in agreement. Thank you, Mr. Thompson. I promise to bring the data and a clear strategy. As she walked away, a sense of empowerment washed over her. The battle had only just begun, but she had taken a significant step towards shifting the dynamics of her workplace. Now she needed to develop her data into an articulate, persuasive presentation that would not only impress the executives, but also secure Mr. Thompson's reluctant support. In the quiet of her workspace, she reflected on the path ahead. This engagement was only the beginning. Would she find the strength to sustain herself through the upcoming challenges, or would the old doubts resurface, threatening her burgeoning resolve? Each day brought new opportunities for triumph or defeat. She had to stay vigilant, embracing the potential for both success and chaos in the journey to reshape her workplace. The clock ticked forward. Time was of the essence. As she gathered her thoughts, another wave of doubt floated to the surface. What if she couldn't deliver the results needed to make an impression in a world designed to dismiss her? She clenched her fists, solidifying her intent. She was in this fight to the end. And just as she began to draft her ideas, a sinking realization hit her. Mr. Thompson's shadow still loomed over her ambitions. Would he choose to thwart her again, or could she convert him into an ally? The looming presentation weighed heavily on her mind, setting the stage for a confrontation where everything would be decided. The time had come to face the formidable opponent directly. The days leading up to her presentation were a blur of sleepless nights and frenetic energy. Sarah immersed herself in research, parsing through data, crafting her narrative, and designing visuals that could condense the plethora of ideas swirling in her mind into brief but impactful points. Each graph she created felt like a barrier she could dismantle between herself and Mr. Thompson, turning numbers into a language of conviction. With every keystroke, she fought against the flickering doubt that occasionally threatened to engulf her. As the date approached, she sought feedback from her colleagues, carefully selecting those whose voices she believed would bolster her own.
Their snippets of encouragement rang in her ears, yet whispers of uncertainty crept in as she prepared to present her ideas. Was she merely an architect of empty promises, or could she really be the catalyst for real change? The line between hope and hesitance was a tightrope she teetered upon daily. The day before the presentation, Sarah found herself in the rare quiet of her office, savoring a moment of clarity. She drew her breath slowly, allowing her thoughts to settle. What if this isn't just about the proposal, she asked herself. In that moment, she understood that her own transformation was as vital as the initiative she was advocating. It was about her evolution from passive contributor to active changemaker, satisfying her own inner desire for recognition, even if it meant confronting her fears head-on. She felt an urgency, a sudden awareness that this was not just an opportunity, but an obligation to uphold her own professional integrity. With renewed vigor, she doubled down on refining her approach. Studying her visual aids, she mapped out the emotional landscape she could navigate. Would she reveal her vulnerability, her aspirations, even in front of Mr. Thompson? She pondered the risk of opening up about her own journey, her struggles with confidence, and her aspiration to uplift others through this program. Perhaps if she illustrated her own need for change, it might resonate with him. On the day of the presentation, she dressed intentionally, opting for a tailored blazer that reflected authority and competence. The mirror affirmed her resolve as she practiced her opening lines, her reflection growing more familiar as a fierce advocate instead of a hesitant player obscured by fear. Stepping into the conference room, she felt the atmosphere shift.
Executives settled into their seats, the air heavy with unspoken expectations. Mr. Thompson was positioned at the far end, his expression impassive but engaging. This was the moment. She inhaled deeply, centering herself, reminding herself of the data and stories that had fueled her passion. "Thank you all for your time today," Sarah began, her voice steady. "I understand that as leaders, your focus rests firmly on results. I stand before you not only to present an idea, but to shed light on an urgent need for engagement within our teams, a need that translates to tangible results." As she unveiled her materials, she could witness shifting expressions on the faces around her. For every chart she unveiled, a layer of uncertainty fell away. With each compelling statistic and narrative of her colleagues' experiences, she beckoned them closer to her vision, her body language transforming into an embodiment of confidence. She spoke not just about productivity and morale, but emphasized respect and empowerment within the workplace, leveraging stories that hit the core of the collective psyche in the room.
Lauren, a colleague from marketing who sat in the back, met her gaze and nodded, a spark of understanding igniting between them. That moment reinforced Sarah's determination as she pushed forward, inviting Mr. Thompson into the dialogue she desperately craved. Midway through her presentation, she sensed a shift in Mr. Thompson's demeanor. His gaze, once skeptical, flickered with intrigue as he finally started to process the implications of what she was proposing. "So what you're saying is," he interjected, "that we're losing more by ignoring these voices than by addressing them head-on." Sarah seized this open door. Exactly. If we can create an inclusive environment filled with passion and insight, we won't just see productivity rise, we'll cultivate loyalty and innovation that will drive this company forward. As the discussion deepened, Sarah's heart raced, heightened not only by the perceived transformation of her audience, but also by the realization that she had truly stepped into her power. However, she could not ignore the nagging worry that lingered. Would this newfound momentum be enough? But before she could spiral back into doubt, she noticed Mr. Thompson leaning forward, engaged, a rare nod of approval emanating from him, creating a swell of hope within her. The challenges that loomed were more than manageable. They promised growth. It was in this moment, amidst the familiar tension of uncertainty, that a crisp realization emerged. She was not simply fighting to make her voice heard. She was compelling a shift in the narrative of her professional journey. What she gained here could be transformational, not just for her, but for everyone in the room. Yet, as she concluded her presentation and awaited their feedback, an unsettling thought crept in. What if the very change she sought created more resistance than acceptance? As uneasy murmurs surrounded her, Sarah realized that the clash she had anticipated was perhaps only just beginning. Would she have the resilience to confront what lay ahead? The murmurs in the conference room grew louder as she waited for a response. Sarah's palms were clammy, and she could feel the weight of the moment pressing against her chest. Mr. Thompson's unblinking eyes scrutinized her, a tranquil surface masking the turmoil that churned beneath. Would her efforts bear fruit, or was she plunging into a precarious sea of dissent? "I appreciate your perspective, Sarah," he finally said, his voice steady yet cautious. "But we've endured changes before. What guarantees that this won't end up as just another initiative that fizzles out?" His words struck a nerve. The doubt she had tried to suppress surged back, gnawing at her confidence. She steeled herself, refusing to let frustration overpower her newfound sense of purpose. "Change is dynamic, Mr. Thompson. What makes this different is our collective investment. If we truly engage our teams in a transparent manner, the innovation will arise organically."
He raised an eyebrow, clearly dissecting her words. The room felt smaller, the air thicker. Was she managing to convey her authenticity, or was it slipping through her fingers? How much of her own conviction was predicated on others' acceptance? These questions clawed at her inner resolve, as if she was on trial, with her professional worth at stake. "Interesting you mention engagement," he replied, folding his arms. "You'll need to provide actionable steps, not just ideals. If you believe in this inclusivity, how do you plan to make it manifest?" The fire in her belly ignited again. This was it, the moment she had mentally prepared for. "Action and trust go hand in hand," she began, fueling her energy with conviction. "We can implement monthly feedback loops, empower team leaders to address concerns directly, and curate training sessions that bolster skills in communication and empathy." A flicker of something, a hint of appreciation, played across Mr. Thompson's expression. "And what about resistance? Even with the best of intentions, you'll face pushback." Her heart thudded. This was the crux of her journey, both personally and professionally.
How would she navigate this? Change always invites resistance, she said, finding strength in her vulnerability. But it also offers us the opportunity to listen, to adapt. If I'm going to champion this, I need to embrace that discomfort, not sidestep it. The path to true growth is seldom smooth. As she spoke, she remembered the struggle she had faced in her career that had molded her resolve. Could she turn vulnerability into a strength that would inspire others? Yet her mind couldn't help but question if she was strong enough to lead this metamorphosis. "Okay," Mr. Thompson said, nodding slowly, as if coming to terms with his thoughts. "You present a compelling argument, but understand, if we proceed, the accountability lies on you." The weight of that statement settled heavily, sending a multitude of emotions cascading through her. This was it, the moment she had waited for, yet it felt like stepping off a cliff. Would she sink or soar? A surge of adrenaline coursed through her as she met Mr. Thompson's gaze unwaveringly. "I accept that responsibility," she declared, feeling a wave of clarity wash over her. "I'm committed to navigating this alongside our teams, ensuring transparency and adaptability every step of the way." After a long pause, Mr. Thompson finally spoke again. "We'll arrange a follow-up meeting. Bring your team, and let's see if we can shape this together." As he said those words, a collective sigh spread through the room. The tension that had held them captive seemed to dissipate, transforming instead into a dull thrum of hope. Yet, as she packed her materials to leave, a new storm brewed within her. This was not just about her burgeoning leadership or the plan she had laid out. It was also about confronting the skepticism of others who thrived on the status quo.
How would she handle such resistance, both secretly lingering and overtly vocal? Fighting against the tide might lead to fractures in her resolve. In that very moment, she understood. The true test was only beginning. As she left the conference room, her mind raced with questions, possibilities, and the undeniable thrill of the chase. Would she have the tenacity to not only initiate this transformation, but to see it through, against all odds? The future loomed before her, expansive yet uncertain, a blank canvas she was now poised to fill, and for the first time in years, she felt the flicker of possibility illuminate her path. But what she didn't know was that behind those murmurs and Mr. Thompson's keen gaze lay a haunting secret, one that could either fracture her burgeoning plans or reinforce her very purpose. As Sarah stepped out of the conference room, a fresh wave of determination coursed through her, but beneath it lay an unsettling undercurrent. The murmurs of doubt clung to her like a shadow, despite the palpable sense of hope that had filled the room. She had ignited a flicker of enthusiasm, yet she was all too aware of the skepticism surrounding her new initiative. How could she cultivate an environment ripe for change when every corner seemed to harbor resistance? She made her way back to her desk, her mind racing with strategies to connect with her colleagues on a personal level. The foundation of her plan rested not solely on structural changes, but on authentic relationships. Each individual had their own set of fears and frustrations, entwined with the company's past struggles. If she could address those, perhaps she could seize the opportunity to turn her vision into a reality. As she organized her notes, she felt an inclination to reach out to her team immediately. They needed clarity. They needed to know she wasn't just selling another vision built on empty promises. Together, they could explore what openness and inclusivity truly meant for their work environment. What would come after mere compliance was crucial: commitment, ownership, and a shared sense of purpose. To fuel her plan, Sarah organized her thoughts into action points. She needed to cultivate not just communication, but trust. Weekly candid check-ins could create a rhythm of feedback where team members felt valued and listened to. More than just a schedule, it had to be a commitment, an organic effort where everyone shared their thoughts. That evening, Sarah set to work drafting an email to her team, keeping her tone inspiring yet down to earth. She wanted them to feel her enthusiasm and understand that they were part of this journey. Yet in her excitement, another doubt lurked. Would they see her as a competent leader or merely a colleague taking on more than she could handle? The next day, she convened a meeting. She set the agenda that focused on team dynamics and collaboration, but also took a bold step by opening the floor to any criticism her plan faced.
She encouraged her team to express whatever misgivings they felt, acknowledging that discomfort was a natural reaction to change. Their honest feedback would be essential to sculpting an initiative that was not only effective, but also embraced by the entire team. As her colleagues entered, Sarah noticed the cautious glances exchanged among them. They were uncertain, but curious. She greeted them with a warm smile, resembling the trust she was hoping to cultivate. But when the queries began, Tentative inquiries, skeptical looks, each one felt like a test. "Why should we believe that this is different?" one colleague asked, his voice steady but laced with doubt. Another leaned forward saying, "We've seen plans fail before. How do we know this will be sustained?" Instead of recoiling from these direct confrontations, Sarah felt invigorated. Here lay the very core of her mission, to transform doubts into dialogue. The conversation turned passionate, revealing underlying frustrations and cynicism, but also a faint glimmer of hope as she shared stories of her own setbacks in embracing change. As discussions deepened, she turned her focus towards conveying respect for their past challenges while reinforcing a vision for a collaborative future. "Together, we can chart a course through this uncertainty," she assured them, finding strength in vulnerability. The room began to shift, subtle nods exchanged among her colleagues as they engaged more openly. Yet even amidst this blossoming dialogue, a lurking fear gripped Sarah's consciousness. What would Mr. Thompson think of her approach? Would he see her willingness to confront resistance as a sign of weakness? The precarious balance of maintaining her integrity while striving for acceptance rattled her confidence. As the meeting drew to a close, something shifted. For the first time, Sarah saw a spark in her team, their ice-encased hearts slowly thawing. Perhaps, just perhaps, they were beginning to trust her vision. But as she left the room, a haunting thought tethered her back. How could she ensure that this budding movement would not fizzle out? How could she secure not only her commitment but theirs amid uncertainty swirling around them? The intensity of her new leadership role pressed down on her with relentless weight. Would the enthusiasm ignited today endure, or would resistance reemerge, threatening to suffocate this very spark she had tried to ignite? She pondered the answer as she moved back to her desk, feeling more alone than ever in her quest for transformation, a burden that now truly felt like hers. What would it take to sustain the momentum she had built? With every intention shifting towards accountability, Sarah knew she would have to confront not just external opposition, but the internal fears lurking within herself. The real battle into uncharted territory was about to begin.
Days turned into weeks, and the whirlwind of emotions that accompanied Sarah's new leadership role ebbed and flowed like a tide. Following her last meeting, she threw herself into bringing her vision for Voices of the Ground to life. Her weekends became rituals of planning and organization, fueled by determination and the slight ache of doubt that consistently hovered. Her team began to engage in regular discussions where ideas flowed freely, and slowly trust built solidly like the foundation of a sturdy building. What had once been mere skepticism gradually transformed into a cautious hopefulness, but with every step forward, Sarah remembered, perception could shift with the wind. Mr. Thompson's scrutiny loomed large. How could she be certain of his commitment to a transformative culture she was striving to build? One afternoon, Sarah caught a glimpse of breakthrough when a colleague shared a pressing concern about a workflow bottleneck. Instead of dismissing it, Sarah leaned in, capturing their collective insights and brainstorming potential solutions. The air filled with excitement as ideas emerged, and for once it didn't feel like merely another initiative. This was genuine collaboration. "That's precisely it," Sarah rallied encouragingly. "If we address these challenges together, we'll harness the potential of our entire team." The more she listened, the clearer her path to empowerment became. Each interaction fortified her understanding of values and experience that ran deep within her colleagues. However, amid the triumphs, she remained vigilant against threats to her credibility. During weekly updates to Mr. Thompson, she found herself treading a delicate balance between presenting actionable progress and guarding against his ever-watchful scrutiny. The pressure felt heavy, yet familiar since it echoed her past struggles where she had always been perceived as less than. Then came the turning point. As she prepared to present outcomes to the executive team, she scrutinized her notes, each phrase echoing with urgency and clarity. Her numbers reflected a noticeable rise in morale and productivity. Team members reported increased engagement, and Sarah understood this moment was about more than numbers. It showcased the strength of diverse voices shaping decisions. On the day of the presentation, she felt empowered. Stepping into the boardroom, she recalled her journey and how far she had come. This wasn't purely about presenting data. This was a statement. She had shifted the narrative. "Thank you for your time," Sarah commenced, her voice steady but vibrant. "What began as an initiative has transformed into a movement. Our findings show significant improvements in employee satisfaction, which inherently translates to our efficiency and output." Mr. Thompson sat at the end of the table, observing closely. Her heart raced as she continued, but she pressed forward.
"We implemented open feedback loops,
And here's the data that highlights contributions made across all levels and departments. Trust is an essential foundation. That's why we've worked collectively to build this. A wave of interest permeated the room. She presented anecdotes her colleagues had shared, and how those real experiences breathed life into her statistics. Sparked curiosity ignited discussions among the partners. They began offering questions, not accusations. Sarah could hardly contain her enthusiasm as momentum swung into a productive dialogue. As Mr. Thompson raised a hand to speak, she felt the familiar tightening in her stomach. But instead of fear, she welcomed his query. "So, what's next, Sarah? How do we sustain this movement past initial enthusiasm?" In that moment, she saw an opening, a chance to involve him in the solution. "We can establish a committee to ensure our feedback initiatives continue to be fine-tuned according to what our employees choose to express. This way, we create a living, breathing culture built together." The room hummed with a sense of possibility. Mr. Thompson leaned forward, and for the first time since the beginning of her journey, she recognized admiration in his eyes. "You've shown us the way forward. Let's continue discussing how we can turn these ideas into action." The meeting concluded with a sense of shared purpose, and as the partners trickled out, a whisper of acknowledgement flowed from Mr. Thompson that felt reassuring. "You've made a solid case, Sarah. Keep up this push and lead us all." Her heart soared. Direct validation ignited a flame of pride within her that she had long suppressed. This moment marked her transformation. No longer just a janitor within the firm, she had stepped into the role of a leader, recognized for her vision and competence. In the weeks that followed, Sarah solidified her place as a trusted advocate for her team and herself. She organized workshops where every voice counted, and Voices of the Ground became a hallmark of the company's values. Team members were no longer just employees. They were change agents. Reflecting on her journey, Sarah realized that the fears she had once harbored transformed into a deeper understanding of her capabilities and value. She had confronted resistance, cultivated trust, and proved her innovative ideas could resonate throughout the company. As she stood at her desk one afternoon, flipping through positive feedback and impactful stories collected from her colleagues, she recognized that this transformation was not just about the firm, it was about her own growth. She had conquered self-doubt, leaving behind the janitorial task that had once cast a shadow over her aspirations. Sarah smiled as she looked out the window, knowing she had soared beyond the confines of her previous identity. She was a leader now. Her voice counted, her impact real, and her journey was just beginning.
When uncertainty crept in, she embraced it, confident in her abilities. This was not the end, but rather a thrilling new chapter of professional evolution, ready to embrace any challenge that lay ahead, together with her team. Don't wait even one more second. You need to subscribe now to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help more dreamers find their voice. Comment reactions and theories about Sarah's transformative journey. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this incredible conclusion. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.